Jeff.
I'll stand up and ask this question. One of the issues that we've been talking about as we've met as a commission, also members of the community, is the ability to do effective long-term planning. You know, we're sort of tethered a little bit by 2-year terms, although some planning does get done. But can you speak to maybe some of the projects you've looked at which are more than 3 or 4 years long, and your ability to execute them successfully?
Yeah, one of the things, and I've seen communities grapple with this question for a long time. One of the tools that we use is our comprehensive plan, and City Council just recently adopted that. It's a 15-year vision, and the last time that was done in the city of Geneva was in the early 1980s. So we had a 30-year-old visioning document. And so that leaves you hanging with respect to community expectation, with respect to our ability to manage these thoughtful long-term projects. So with the adoption of this comprehensive plan, we were able to develop out some longer-term individual area plans. So we have a 15-year strategic plan that talks about our values. It talks about how we're going to make decisions, how we're going to filter ideas that come across the table. And then we use that to craft these smaller plans. So we have a lakefront downtown plan. Geneva is situated beautifully on Seneca Lake. If you haven't been there, you should go. And years ago, we said, how are we going to connect lakefront downtown? What are we going to do to make sure that we've got 2 cool civic amenities here? We established a plan. We said it's a 10-year plan. Council bought it. The majority of council got reelected on it, and we kept executing on it over a period of time. That continuity happens for a couple of reasons. One, we've thankfully had a series of successive city councils where the incumbency rate is relatively high. More people say, I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years and I'm ready to be done, than get voted out. It's more often a personal choice. But we've also had great continuity of staff. So, for example, 10 years ago, we adopted that lakefront downtown connectivity plan. And this past year, we were awarded a $10 million downtown revitalization grant from the state of New York. And we were able to check the last remaining boxes on that 10-year plan and put it back on the shelf. But that can't happen if you're turning over staff every 2 years or you're turning over key decision makers too frequently.
Thank you.
Yeah, as an example.
So again, unfortunately, Commissioner, Mark Baker left. He's been a long time manager of our city convention center here. For about 20 years, we've been sort of struggling with trying to considering building a parking garage to sort of help the city center. How would a process like that happen under a city manager system?
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, we're in the middle of a very similar conversation. Several years ago, actually in 2008, the city conducted that lakefront downtown study that I talked about. And the study said, it was a very high-level study, but the study said you need to do a parking analysis. You need to determine what your course of action is here on parking, because everyone says, those first couple of years when you say, well, it's tough to find a parking space, and someone says, well, that's a great problem to have. Well, you only get to say that for a little while, then it's not a great problem to have. And so they called on us to do a parking study. So City Council commissioned the parking study, and it was just recently completed. And the parking study ultimately said, you don't need a garage. You need to manage your inventory in a different way. Regulatory, do all of these things until you get to a parking garage. And so what City Council's role in that situation was, first, looking to staff to develop the data. Staff presents council with the data. Council has not adopted that parking study yet, but it'll come to the floor for adoption. And City Council will, as part of their adoption of the findings of that study, will most likely say, okay, Matt, you and the staff go to work drafting regulations that will support the goals of the study, and we will do that, and City Council will adopt. They also have the opportunity to say, I know what that study says, but it took me 45 minutes to park for lunch the other day. I want a parking garage. They have the authority to override that and to put that in the capital plan. So their role in a major project like that is multifold in a variety of situations. but they control the purse strings, so they have to get it into a capital plan. They have to fund it. They have to adopt the budgets that fuel the capital plan, and they ultimately have to site it, right? They have to determine what the best location is. We offer lots of advice. We offer lots of counsel and data, but at the end of the counsel with an S and data. But at the end of the day, City Council makes those decisions. Along with, again, we'll make recommendations on operations. Is it free parking? Do we charge for parking outside and inside? Those are all recommendations that staff makes, but City Council at the end of the day makes the ultimate determination.
Great.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Just so if the report were to suggest that you ought to implement other ways of dealing with parking problems, such as maybe managed parking, which might be paid parking.
Right.
So that's obviously a hot button issue for anybody that starts with not having paid parking and goes in that direction. So how do you think you would proceed in that direction to decide how you might go about thinking about implementing that in Geneva?
So what our council really firmly believes in is inclusive and transparent decision making. It's right in our comprehensive plan. So I just listed out a bunch of steps, right? Study and data and laws and all capital plans and all these things. Where City Council will most often start is, let's convene a public meeting. Let's get the right people around the table, get the stakeholders, including people like individual store owners, individual residents of the downtown district and beyond, users of downtown, the business improvement district, or you have a merchants association or a downtown business association here, bringing all of those people to the table so that they can hear, so that City Council can hear directly from the end user, and that will help shape their next step. So a lot of times, I mean, one of the things we can't do, and I just described a perfect scenario where council convenes the group and they say, 80% of us feel like the parking garage should go right there, and we're willing to accept the tax increase if it means free parking in the garage. And City Council says, oh, we heard the people have spoken, and we'll site the garage there, and everybody will come to the ribbon cutting and they'll be ecstatic, and they'll forget all about the tax increase. But sometimes it doesn't go that way. Sometimes City Council will have clear understanding that parking garages don't pay for themselves, that free parking isn't always the right option for everything. And they will hear the public say, we need a free parking garage. And City Council will go back and look at the numbers and say, we can't provide you with a free parking garage, and they'll have to deal with that. I'll tell you where that most often happens for us are water and sewer funds, utility funds. So this is the first public utility that I've ever managed. And the biggest challenge for me is that everyone outside of city government understands that water and sewer funds are business funds, right? Our auditors see them that way. The state comptroller's office sees them that way. But the setting of rates is very similar to the setting of tax rates. I always say I spend with my team months preparing this budget document. It's 100 pages. It's bound. It's beautiful. It's got all this great photography, and they turn to 2 pages. What's the tax rate? What's the water and sewer rate? That's what they want to know, because that's what their constituents want to hear about. The cost of providing this service, or the cost of getting this service. And so in a lot of circumstances we've gone. So the best example I can think of is in 2008, the city of Geneva went under a consent order with the Department of Environmental Conservation. The consent order is where the DEC says, you got a problem and you're going to fix it now. We're not going to argue about it. We're not going to talk about cost. You're going to fix it now. And so our problem at the time was inflow and infiltration, which is where rainwater gets into your sewer pipes. And so your treatment plant is treating rainwater the same way it treats wastewater, which is bad for your plant, bad for the lake, bad for everybody. So the city had to devise this solution. So we devised a solution which was an overflow treatment process that dealt with rainwater in a different way. All of that to say it was a $16 million solution. And the good news was the state gave us a 0% loan for $16 million. Unfortunately, $16 million at 0% is still $16 million. And so we had to pay for it. And At the exact same time, their rookie city manager, a guy who'd never been a city manager before, also discovered this water meter replacement program. And water meters, you may know, fail in favor of the customer over time. So if you have a 20-year-old water meter, it's only reading about 60% of your consumption. So I said, we got to replace all these water meters, and we got to pay for this wastewater treatment plant. So everybody got a double increase at the same time, and we spent a full year that year changing water and sewer rates. We have quarterly billing in 4 separate quarters, 4 different rates, because they were responding to political pressures. So all of that to say, you know, the question about what city council's role is, they have to be responsive to their constituents, and sometimes they have to, that being responsive to your constituents is helping them understand the business case, communicating the business case.